real Kyper and Bourne on Sportsnet 590 The Fan.
We're back. Glad you're all aboard for the next 2 hours. Nick Kypreos, Justin Bourne, Derek Brandale, Jen Rolnick in with David. He's not even listening.
The cis man?
I think so.
We going with Dave or David?
I don't know. We're going with Sammy McKee producing, who, by the way,
Samwise Gamgee
is now like far beyond just a producer.
Multi-platform.
He does it all now. Real Kyper and Bourne, a golf show.
He was on the Bunkus show for an hour today.
Oh, he already did an hour on the Bunkus show?
After doing
the morning show.
Yeah.
And when we had left yesterday, he had mentioned to me, Kyper, I got to do a hit at 7 a.m. And, that's early for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you've done those? And I'm like, yeah, I've done those.
It's tough to pair up your mouth and your brain.
It really is. And here's the proof in the pudding, as we say on Sammy. This is just too early for Sammy. Let's have a listen.
But I would say eye test wise, they are better this year. I think Liljegren taking a huge dump. A huge what? A huge dump?
It just happened.
I haven't had my coffee yet, so that's not going to happen.
A huge dump.
That's what you think of Timothy Liljegren
Yes.
and his
This
great
is-
strides this season.
This is Liljegren down the stretch taking a huge dump, according to Sam McKee.
It's a
Right?
tough business, man.
I
It
love
is.
it. The puck dropped on my beer league game at 10:30 last night. So,
Fortunately, I can't relate to ever saying anything inappropriate.
What
on
happened
the-
yesterday with you? I mean, I do not condone with that type of language you
No.
used yesterday.
Oh, first
I
off,
don't.
First off, F you, Kipper. No, but second off, I got caught in a hot mic yesterday, and I apologize for that. I got to watch my language in here a little bit. Apologize to Dave Nonis.
See, the difference is for listeners and followers, like when I say it, when it's I don't mean to.
Right.
You were calculated on that one.
I do not think so. That just fell out of my head.
No, it did.
That was unprofessional,
It
and I'll
did.
be better.
Did you drop a few of those last night watching the Rangers and the Flames last night?
Oh, boy. Did I
Because
ever.
that was a fantastic game, and we're going to get into that. The hits, the Trouba hits. We got some sound bite, maybe a few Kippers Clippers with Gerard Gallant. In about 18 minutes, we're going to go to Chris Therien, former Flyer defenseman, big player in the Snow the Goalie podcast. And, of course, we'll get his thoughts on Tortorella and that really strange announcement of be patient with us, folks, letter that went out yesterday. We're gonna get
Please
his
attend.
thoughts.
Please attend.
Yes. Ken Hitchcock is going to join us in about 40 minutes. Fourth winningest coach in NHL history. We'll get his thoughts on the game today and maybe a few Brett Hull stories in the process.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Those never get old at all. And in the second hour, Larry Brooks. Tons to get into with him. Just mentioned the Rangers, but also a lot of talk around the NHL Players Association, ready to name Marty Walsh their next executive director of the NHLPA, and how this is going to kind of play out here in the next little while. So tons, absolutely tons in the next 2 hours. And wherever you're watching or listening, Sportsnet 590 The Fan, our YouTube channel on Sportsnet or Sportsnet Now, iTunes, Spotify. We are so happy you are aboard.
Yeah. Going to be a good day, even
So-
without the Leafs.
Here we are, day 2 of the hostage situation, or day 2 of no Leaf game.
Yeah.
And we'll wait on that until Friday. But a game last night that really had the hockey kind of community buzzing last night,
Yeah.
big time. And it wasn't lost on many that was the best game of the regular season.
What didn't it have, right? You had offense, you had fights and hits and comebacks, and it was really electric game. You know what? This is something to keep in mind for the league when they look at the schedule. When teams are exhausted, they can't put that. This is fresh teams coming off a break full of, pea and vinegar.
I disagree.
What do you mean you disagree?
I disagree on the reason why you saw a game like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You don't think it was fresh teams?
No.
What
We
you
do
think it
not
was?
agree.
I think it was just two teams with a lineup that kind of can go down that path.
Yep.
In a million years, with all your bets, would you put anything on that the Leafs could play a game like that, or maybe 6 or 8 teams?
It's unlikely.
It's unlikely that the Leafs could play like Calgary or New York.
I mean, they could have a game like that. I don't think it would come naturally to them. Sure, they can.
No, they can.
Zach
They
Aston
had
Reese
this
tried to fight
year.
Radko Gudas. It could
They,
happen.
they had a couple of greasy ones this
Oh
year.
my gosh!
But it didn't look like
That's not the way. That's not them, though.
No, it's
that's
not.
them.
Correct.
That's not their style. That's not where they're shaping up towards to go. They want to beat you skating around you,
Yeah.
but not through you. So
Definitely their preference.
My
I would
point
agree.
is, and this isn't to start knocking against the Leafs. I'm saying that there's too many teams not built like the Calgary Flames or the New York Rangers. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
That these games that we saw last night are far and few.
Yeah. And listen, they're awesome. If you're a fan of the Leafs, you're listening to Kypreos say that and you're going, yeah, those teams are both worse than us in the standings, so
Yeah.
we don't care.
I'm not. Listen.
Right.
Valid point.
Yeah.
100%. But you want me now to watch for 2.5 hours
That's the point.
and feel like I can't leave my seat because something is going to happen.
Right.
I'm leaving the teams with the more points
Yeah.
in your standings
Yeah.
and feeling like I won't miss something if I go to the fridge or take a leak.
Yeah. The Flames for the first half of the year have been boring. I think Eric Francis said that on our show yesterday.
he literally was like, I don't know if you guys care about the minutia of this team because they are boring. That's
But
what
they
he said.
can do this. They do have those guys. It's
They-
nice to see. It's a reminder to
100%.
them.
So are we now in a place where they just choose not to? And last night, for whatever reason, and listen, I'm
Desperation.
not throwing away your, hey, they feel good, they feel refreshed.
Yeah.
But it was way more than just feeling good and refreshed. That's a team that probably came in here for Calgary and said, hey, if we don't pick it up now, if we don't start off tonight in
Yeah.
New York and play like our foot is completely down on the pedal, we are going to be really embarrassed at the end of the year. So let's get going.
30 games.
That's why it felt like a playoff game, because Calgary, maybe for the first time this season, treated it like a playoff game or a must-win desperation game.
It's a fresh start for them. Like the sands of the sea or of the hourglass are running out on their season. They got 30 games left and they need more of this. You know, one thing that stood out to me is when they lost Matthew Tkachuk, the idea was that he was the guy who dragged them into fights, and Kadri was going to do that. Kadri has played great hockey. He was an all-star and all that, but he hasn't been as greasy at times. And you saw he greased Trouba behind the net a little bit and perhaps got his attention.
And got the dominoes going.
Right. And I think that's good for the Flames, whether they were on the wrong side of a couple of hits or not.
Yeah. And it's fantastic. But,
Yeah.
you know, again, just in a big picture, like if we had games like that more often, I mean, we would look at the league in a entirely different light.
You know what's interesting is
Do you not?
I agree.
Right?
I'll watch that regardless of outcome every time.
I think the mix of incredibly high skill and speed combined with the physicality was what
few
made that
sports
game
can
great.
can hang with
Listen,
that.
let's be honest.
That game
here.
last night was
Let's be
fast and skilled.
Stop it with
It's
the skill
true.
for a second.
I agree.
Heedle's flying around out there.
I'm not
Zabinajad going bar
saying-
down.
I
Like,
am not saying you're wrong here, Sammy, but what I'm saying here is what led the charge in this game.
Oh, no question.
Not the skill,
no question.
but just the sheer emotion of a couple of big hits. And Kelly Rudy called the game last night, and I think there was one line that he used that just stuck out like a sore thumb for me, and that is, I could choose 8 different goals to show you, and I can choose to show some really good saves, but this is what we're showing
Here's what you
you.
want to see.
Boom, boom, boom. That's it. And what leads the whole highlight reel? The hits, right? all of it. That led last night's charge.
Yeah, I agree.
For
So
sure.
the greater zoom out then is how does the league encourage that? You know, because the teams themselves, obviously the ownership would like to keep that energy in it. The teams themselves want to win games. If a team like that wins the cup this year, you'll get more copycats.
I don't know.
How does the sport, how has the sport lost it?
Yeah.
Perhaps it's hard to do it when everyone's so fast. It's tough to line guys up.
And this isn't about, listen to me carefully, everyone. This isn't about going backwards. It's not going to find goons again.
No.
It's not. It's about bringing
better
more
hockey when there's that-
emotion
Yeah.
and the physicality of what this game is all about. And it's almost as if we've been so scared of the big open ice hit. And I get it, all the talk about CTE and all of it, and the concussions and just that negative effect that it's had on our game and how it's made other people feel, to the point where they, there's some that lobbied, like, let's completely take out checking out of the game. Let's just go to the skill of passing and shooting. And I'm like, oh my God, there's some games you watch and it's like watching paint dry. Like, am I watching a plant grow here?
So
I have no interest.
So then I wonder if it's even possible to strive for that balance of protecting people and CTE and concussions and all that stuff, which is a very serious element. And, you know, talk to my dad about it. He believes he's been greatly affected by it, and I've seen it. But at the same time, the UFC exists. It exists because people accept in some sports that they're okay with it. And is that hockey players now? I don't know. I don't know what our game is. Maybe our game is lacking identity now that we're trying to figure out, are we the clean skill game or are we accepting of some of the risk? Because I don't think you can play a game.
But I don't know, not
between
not a
those-
lot of people, came out of that game last night worried about concussions or CTE. They just took it for face value. That's kind of one of the first things I noticed is how physical it was. Fightings. And listen, don't think for 1 second I think I'm going to get away with going 2 hours with you beside me and we're not going to have a conversation on, are the fights needed after a hit?
Right.
We're going to go down there.
We are.
We know that. But the trickle effect about, did we cross a line? Did Jacob Trouba cross a line here with the dangers of his hits? Like, I'm watching last night and I'm going, you see that guy right there named Jacob Trouba? That is our modern day Scott Stevens right there.
Yeah.
Nobody on this planet right now can make a better open ice hit than that guy. That guy should put videos out. He should do clinics. He should tell everybody this is the best way to throw an open ice clean check. Kelly Rudy's a Calgary Flames guy, okay? I mean, the first thing out of his mouth is, that's a clean hit, man. I can't knock against it.
No.
I can't knock. There's nothing there that I don't see that I can say, I've got a problem with you, Jacob Trouba.
And there's people who are listening to this going, okay, it's a fine defensive play. You separate the man from the puck, but it's so much more than that because intimidation is real in hockey and it is a physical sport and that exists. And so coming in against the Rangers defense now, you have to know who you're playing against. It'll affect whether you dump it or carry it in the zone. It'll affect how you react on 50-50 plays. Like the Trouba hit has a larger effect than just a good defensive play. And I think that's lost a little bit when you have these conversations with the more pacifist fans who don't think it's necessary, is the value of that hit is real. And as someone who had some hesitation as a player, I understand what it's like to be like, oh, just not him. I'm firing it in the other corner because I'm not going down his side. It changes how you play, and it has strategic advantages too.
Most importantly, if you're in the NHL and the NHLPA, it changes the way you watch. It brings you up to the edge of your seat, and you're more apt not to miss shift to shift.
Mm-hmm.
And, you want to talk about, we need gambling to keep them engaged. No! You need that game last night to keep them engaged. That's what you need.
Mm-hmm.
Forget about everything else.
Ironically, you need
Forget
engaged
about
players.
shooting pucks at a stupid surfboard. or the over-under. Just have a game like last night that you can present somebody who's paying $200 or $300. You got no problem at all moving forward.
I don't even have an argument. I think it's a great point.
Why did Kadri look at his feet when he was a foot away from Trouba?
Can
I ask you that?
You know why? Because 90% the time
99% of the time you don't get hit.
That's why.
But he had the puck, looked up, saw it was Trouba, comes over the blue line and put his head down.
Well,
did he see it was Trouba?
Mistake.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, or he forgot it was Trouba.
I don't know. Something
Or
forgot.
he saw through Trouba.
Yeah.
But God,
Looking
that
past
was
him.
unbelievable. Do you guys want to hear what Daryl Sutter had to think about the physicality?
To hear.
His
It's
Kadri's
very,
coach. Okay.
Yes, it's very good.
Did you see the proper response to those hits from Trouba and Blake?
Sure. I mean, Naz hit Trouba in the first period hard, right? If you watched, that was the stage for, it wasn't a physical game. There was 3 or 4 big hits. They were all clean, good hits.
It wasn't a physical game. There were just 3 or 4 big hits.
What are you people talking about? Are you watching out there? It's great though, but that to me is someone acknowledging that, he doesn't expect his guys to go fight after that. Just it's a big hit. Move on.
Would you like to hear what Gallant had to say about the physicality in the game?
I would, yes.
Like I said, tonight it was different. There was big hits, there was a bunch of fights going on, and I don't know, first game back, maybe the guys are pissed off that the break was too short. I really don't know how to explain it. It's the first time I've been involved in the game similar to that tonight, and since I've been with this team, for sure.
Oh, he liked it.
Loved it. Well, I mean, look at Gallant's career. I think he's going to like a game like that. The toughest guys going.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it comes to the big issue about fighting after a big hit. And Gallant was asked about that, and he gave an answer. We can go off of it if you guys want to hear the clip.
Yeah, let's go with Gallant, and then we'll play off of it.
It's a shame you have to do that every time you throw a hit, but I mean, for me, the first hit was a good, clean hockey hit, and it wasn't a dangerous hit, and you wouldn't think there'd be a retaliation for that, but there wasn't, and that's fine. But the second one, I mean, he hit Kadri pretty hard, and it was looked like Kadri might have got hurt. And I understand guys standing up for their teammates, it's all the time, but I just think sometimes it gets a little overreaction sometimes. I mean, Trouba's a big hitter, and people know that, but the first one I thought was a little overreaction for me.
What do you think, Kip?
What do I think? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think
situational.
Yeah, but it's not situational. It's really an individual preference. Like, you don't have to. People are right. You don't have to fight after a big hit. The question is, do you want to?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's where Dylan Dubé says, yes, I want to. And I think there's more upside in doing it, either for me as an individual or as a team collectively. And you can't take that away from him.
Mm-hmm.
That's his call. It's not yours or mine, and it's not you at home watching on the couch. It's not even the coaches, to be honest with you, unless you want to follow a strict rule that he shuts you down on that, then that's on the coach. But that's not happening. So it's Dylan Dubé's got to make a split-second call.
Yeah.
He doesn't have review video. He can't go and watch it 3 times and say, hey, listen, did he clip his head or not?
Yeah, you don't want to err on the side of just letting it go.
I don't know.
So I agree. I agree with that. I think that here's what's changed for me is that because we don't have hits like that with any consistency, when you throw a hit like that, it sends the message to the other team that you're looking to hurt them. You're looking to put a licking on them, right? And that is a deviation from normal defense, because nowadays we don't see it. So when you do see a guy get smoked, you think the guy is being a predator, and you want to say to the other team, if you want to try to hurt our players, which certainly that hit by Trouba is not just separating a man from the puck, it's trying to hurt a guy in a way that is legal. And I got no problem with the team saying, don't try to hurt our guys. We're going to fight about it. We're going to be upset. You're going to have to answer for it if you do try to put guys in the trolley tracks and light them up. So, yeah, you don't have to fight after every clean hit. I understand that. But I do think because the game is different now and there's less of it, when it happens, it stands out as something that's like actively a pursuit of hurting my guy.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It's like Kyper nailed it. Dylan Dubé probably could have made a business decision there and maybe not gone after Trouba. He was a little bit weight classed. But I think we'd all be sitting here saying, what the hell, how do you not go after him if he didn't do it? Like, can you imagine somebody did that to Marner and, Bunting skates away? It's like we'd be in here eviscerating him. Yeah. So it's just like he has to me, I think the first one, he's right, Gallant. Like the first one I don't think was necessary. It was within the flow of play. Puck goes the other way. Tanev goes out of the game because he already had his upper body injury, and he's out now. He leaves the game. Maybe he didn't need to do that. But the second one was such a flashpoint moment. Bucket goes flying, like
boys, that was a
crowd,
big hit.
crowd goes crazy. That's where you got to jump in. If I'm his teammate, I'm jumping him.
And even Trouba, who's the best out there, I mean, he's human, so he's going to have thoughts in his head like, if I do this, I know there might be some repercussions from it.
It'd be fun to be big and strong like Trouba and not care.
Well, listen, sometimes you're playing 3 games in 4 nights and you got a sore shoulder and you're like, nah, not tonight.
Yeah.
That's human behavior.
Yeah.
But if I know that I'm going to go out there and I have the potential to make a hit like this and no one's really going to come after me, I'm doing it a lot more.
Sure.
Or I'm going to look for it a lot more.
Yeah.
And now it's a free for all. And I don't know if people truly understand that dynamic in a hockey game, that, you give an inch, they'll take a mile.
Yeah.
And then there's a domino effect. Well, if Trouba can do it and look like a rock star, well, maybe Lindgren's going to go, okay, well, maybe I'll get a couple of licks in here. And it just kind of ripples. It can ripple in many different ways. Or you can force guys to say, okay, if I'm going to go out there and make this hit, whether it's clean or not, I know that maybe someone's going to challenge me. It will affect my behavior moving forward.
Yeah, and obviously that's more relevant in a playoff series.
Okay, we're going to welcome in Chris Terry, and someone that knows on occasion what it's like to pay a price for a hit or two throughout his career. Chris, how are you, pal? Thanks for joining us. We're just talking about that Ranger-Calgary game. I'm not sure how much you saw of it, but we spent a good portion of the first 20 minutes of our show talking about how it gave us a look of a regular season game that we haven't seen all season long.
Kind of makes it interesting, doesn't it? I mean, Kyper, like, we talk like this, we come on, and again, there was a lot of guys in our era that just weren't savages by nature, and I've just thought, catching up a little bit. I actually had work all morning today, guys, but I heard a little bit about what went on. These are things like where you get those big hits and the retribution, but the thing is that, you wonder sometimes, like, guys are actually starting to talk about, like, leaving the big hits alone. Like, if it's okay to hit a guy if it's a clean hit, but for years, guys, like, you hit a guy wrong 20 years ago, 25 years ago, there was going to be automatic payback for that.
Yeah, and obviously that has gone away a little bit. What were your thoughts on Trouba's hits last night and him fighting after? Were you fine with how the physical element of that particular game last night?
I don't have a problem with any kind of physical, part of the hockey game as long as it's done right. Guys, as I said, I just following up and hearing a little bit from what I was listening, waiting to come on. But again, like, part of the hitting part of the game, were Trouba's hits dirty from where you saw them?
No.
Clean.
No. Clean. So, and that's exactly what I was saying, is if the hits are clean, why are we making a stink about it? There's not enough hitting in the game as it is anymore anyway. Like, so if you get a guy that's out there and he's making great hits and they're clean hits and there's retribution for it, I don't get it. Because the league doesn't go that way anyway. I mean, we don't see line brawls like you used to see in the 90s over whatever, because there was two fourth lines out there that were ready to mix it up over whatever went on. I have no problem, guys, with a good, clean hit, even if it brings people off their ice or they don't like the way it was made. But there has to be room for that. And there has to be, and I don't necessarily think that there has to be immediate retribution for it. There's enough dirty hits. I bet you there's more dirty hits now than there probably was at one point in the NHL, like, long ago.
When we talk,
guys police the league themselves.
When we talk about the league sanitizing itself the last 10 or 15 years with all of this stuff, has there been a big or another organization that's been impacted so much because of this when it comes to their image than the Philadelphia Flyers?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of guys have Kyper, but you're right. But this was a team, and I talk about it all the time because, historical elements of the Philadelphia Flyers was they were the true brethren, the true brotherhood of the Wolfpack, right, in the NHL. Like they won. You can look at the Montreal Canadiens who won in the 70s. The New York Islanders had an edge, but it was the Flyers who were you're going back. They're the only all-Canadian team. Every member was a Canadian in the 74-75 season that won those cups. But you're absolutely right. In terms of the national appearance from Canada, even the world appearance of what the Flyers were, what they stood for, the players and the personnel they had, yes, there's no team that's been affected by it more for what their persona was, but also what their appearance has been to the brand here in Philadelphia. Absolutely, Kyper. What a fair statement to make, and I totally agree with that.
And it's just not like Bobby Clark and Hound Dog Kelly we're talking about. I mean, Jeremy Roenick, Darian Hatcher. These guys were in the 90s, man. They were tough. They were vicious at times.
But hold on, the current Flyers team is kind of trying to do that with Tortorella, aren't they? With Delorier and they got a number of guys that are willing to go. No.
Well, they'll go. I mean, it's just again, it's just different to me, guys, from the era. Every team back then every team had 3 or 4 guys. That it was a different sell. It was a different. But I've talked about this. That those personalities, in a lot of ways, made up the charisma of an entire hockey team, and they could do that. 4 guys with those kind of personalities could dominate a locker room because they were the guys that everybody gravitated to. And so that's why there's guys you always hear a guy like a Zach McEwen. People talk highly about him as players. The current player. But back then, there was teams fabricated on that. There were personalities. Kyper, we knew who you were. We line up. And there was but every team had guys. Kenny Baumgar. You could go through lists and lists and lists of names of guys that made it kind of interesting and kind of put everybody, I think, on the seat of their pants. And certainly the Philadelphia Flyers, of all the organizations in the history of the sport, were the ones that probably reaped the most from that attitude or that lineage of the tough guys playing hard, the physicality, the brotherhood, sticking together. They filled in every part of what hockey was and what we expected it and thought it was. And so absolutely, they've been the team that's been hurt the most by the loss of that in many ways, and of what we've seen guys. And probably, you're right, 15 years, I think it's been kind of where we've seen it start and delve into where we are now.
So then you look at the personality, the collective personality of the Flyers, and how does that contrast, I guess, with the recent letter that John Tortorella wrote to season ticket holders that basically says, we know it's not going great, but please stick with us. We're going to find it here. It feels like a pretty mewling. I don't know.
Desperate.
How do you feel about a letter to the season ticket holders?
Well, listen, I'll tell you one thing, all right? I like the job that Torts has done in terms of getting the players to be accountable. However they think they do that, whether it's his old brand of being a bully. So here's one thing I'll tell you guys. That letter could not come from Chuck Fletcher. There's no way.
Okay.
Absolutely. There's no way that he could have sent that letter out and the fans, again, said, oh, great, this is where it had to come from Torts because he's the one that's really, I think, been the integral part of trying to get in guys' wheelhouses, whether you're young, whether you're older. Here's the other thing, too. I think it's fair. And, guys, we've talked through the years, the last couple of years, and things have been really bad. Last year, my issue with this team was its effort that I saw on the ice. It was pathetic. It was a disgrace to watch from a professional standpoint. Guys, literally, they could have gone in the corner with a dozen eggs and came out every time with every egg intact. That's what it was. That's no compete. So Torts this year, and I don't care about fighting. I just want you to compete in the corners in front of the net and try to win a battle because that helps your team. This year we've seen that. We saw a competitive game last night against the Islanders and a 2-1 loss. Here's the one thing, and I think Torts put it together. He's going to be here for 4 years. He ain't going anywhere. He's held guys accountable. He's made the team more interesting to watch. The other thing in the city of Philadelphia right now, too, guys, this city in and of itself has gone through an amazing amount of success with other sports teams of late. The Eagles going to the Super Bowl, maybe one of the best regular season teams ever. I think they're going to win the game. The Phillies with a miraculous run. Major League Soccer going to the final game and losing in overtime. There's been a lot of good things that have gone on in sports in this city. The 76ers, one of the hottest teams in the league. The Flyers are at the low end of that cycle right now. And I think Torts is saying, bear with us. It ain't going to happen tomorrow. It's not happening the next day. But we're trying to build something, and we're hoping that you're paying attention to what we're doing. That being said, I'm not making excuses for the personnel on the ice. Yes, they work harder. They still need players in here, like playmaking players, that difference makers that can make an impact on a hockey game. They're not there yet, but they're at least rebuilding a culture of what once was with hard work. Yeah, some bruisers that maybe you don't see as much on other teams with the talent level they have, but they're trying to put an impact back on the city. And I think the biggest part right now, Nick, Kyper was saying, was that they have to rebuild the relationship with the city. And I think that they've really made some significant strides this year with an attitude change and a culture, a return to culture that was once here that was not represented in the last 3 or 4 years, to be quite honest with you.
You know, the one thing the other thing is I'm not as surprised, Chris, in terms of a letter like that, but just the timing of the letter. Really, the week of the Super Bowl with your local team playing a huge game on Sunday. This, to me, just reeks of an organization that is either desperate or really, really scared about losing a fan base.
Yeah, I think. Well, certainly they want to get back to trying to get people in, and I've told them. Listen, I've been back in the office over there, and I've told them pretty frankly, like, you've got there's more pain coming here, and Torch knows that. Like, if you're a Flyer and you're being told, well, this is another year or two build, you're just being lied to. Like, you're not being told the truth. And I've told the higher, like the business side, this is a process. And again, and I'm going to be honest with you, finishing between 17th and 25th in the standings does not help this franchise at all. That being said, you can't ask guys to go in the tank. Nobody's ever going to do that. But you're right. I mean, it's an odd timing, but it comes after the All-Star break. It's the second half of the season. And I believe it or not, guys, that's something Torts would want to do. I just think there's been so much successes. I just think he wants to make sure, and maybe there is part of him saying, hey, we need to make sure people still realize that the Philadelphia Flyers are alive and well, and that there will be a corner to turn at some point where they'll be relevant again and somebody else will fall. And that's kind of, unfortunately, though, it's been going on since that knockout in the playoffs of 2020, and they're trying to find a beacon of hope, an array of light somewhere to shine on this team because, they've had misses in the draft. The Nolan Patrick thing, who knows if that could have been a better thing for the Flyers, made them better up the middle. There's a lot of what-ifs, a lot of contracts that are here that they don't want here. There's injured guys. They have long-term left. So that's going to be one of the things that they're going to have to do. And I think they realize they're going to have to salary dump and they're going to have to change a lot of the things. But I think what Torts is saying, guys, he's got to clean up the culture. And I think he's gotten a little bit of that from some of the brass is saying, hey, we need a return to what semblance of what was that represents this city. And we've not seen that of late. So I think that was part of the messaging for me, was really not so much to a national audience, to the immediate fans here in the city of Philadelphia that I think were growing tired of what they were seeing.
We're talking to former Philadelphia Flyer defenseman Chris Therien. Snow the Goalie is the podcast, and he's got a great book out called Chris Therien, Road to Redemption. JB, you got any follow-up on the letter? I got one more for Chris.
Go ahead if you're sticking with it.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with it. One more. You had mentioned earlier that there's just no way that Chuck Fletcher could ever have gotten away with writing that letter. So you tell me what that letter does to Chuck Fletcher in terms of, how Flyer fans move forward with Chuck Fletcher.
Well, I don't think. I mean, if they do a poll like the elective poll last year, there was someone like 96% said they were dissatisfied with the job that he's done. I mean, listen, anybody could say that, right? Like it could be a critique of a general manager. Ron Hextall is going through, his own stuff in Pittsburgh, so that changes and it goes on and on. But for me, Chuck Fletcher, I think, had just lost the bankroll with the fans in terms of saying, hey, we're going to do this and here's what we're doing. Like, after the summer last year, I think that he'd lost a lot of people because I still have fans come up and they're like, I don't want to hear Chuck Fletcher's name. You'll hear that from a lot of fans. Philly's a very nitpicky niche city with what they believe in, and once that they've made up their mind on someone, it's over. They're all about torts. I can tell you that. Go look at social media, the fans, and just read it. The fans are on with what Torts is saying and what he's preaching, and that's why, for me, from a political standpoint, and there should be no politics in sports, but there is, that letter could only come from John Tortorella from where this team is sitting right now.
Well, I'll be the first one to say, man, the NHL needs the Flyers back. No questions asked.
They do. They absolutely do. They're great for regional TV. They're great for and listen, like, and I know it. Like, when I go around and I traveled and I did radio and TV for all those years and traveled, I mean, there's some buildings that have 2,000 people with Flyers jerseys on it in other buildings. You know, they are an important brand. They're a world brand. People that go overseas know who the Philadelphia Flyers are. No one's going to talk about, you know, the Nashville Predators in Europe, but people do know who the Philadelphia Flyers are all over the world. And I agree with you, Kyper. It's a good thing for the NHL when the Philadelphia Flyers are at the front of the pack, at least prevalent, you know, an importance to the league. And I think that's really what Torts is saying, is that we're going to try to keep climbing. We're going to try to keep getting better players in here. But I'm asking for patience amongst a myriad of other really good things going on in Philadelphia right now in the sporting world.
Well, at least they got Gritty to hold the fort.
Yeah, you know what?
Can he play center?
You know what? They were doing so well. And then I saw him with like a banana hammock on the beach last week, and I'm like, oh, God, here we go. But, you know, at the All-Star game, and that was it. That was it. But, you know, he's become good for the kids, I think. And I think that, you know, he's not quite the face of the franchise he was a couple of years ago.
Here's the problem with that. Kids don't pay the bills.
They can bring people who do, though.
All right.
And Philly is that town, right? Like, and you do get people who's come to you like, you know, I just want to watch the game. You know, I just want to watch the product on the ice. But and that's one thing, guys. A lot of old school Flyer fans are still here, you know, hanging on to a lot of the history of this team.
Hey, Chris, really appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this, man.
As always, guys, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Chris
Appreciate it.
You know, it's a big hit too. All-Star break is that mascot game.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's true.
I mean, like, all kidding aside, it's, I don't know when Gritty came in. 5 years ago? 6 years ago? Sammy, would you even know? It's like, I think.
What was his draft year?
Gritty came in hot. He
fell. He had a bad spill.
What?
On one of his very first kind of public appearances. And everybody's like, who the hell is this? And, oh, my God, that thing's like horrible and get rid of it. And then he turns out to be the biggest star.
So
mascot star.
He celebrated his 4th birthday on September 24th this year.
I'm telling you.
First seen 2018.
It was not a good opening night for him.
You know, it's funny that you hear Bundy talking about, you know, the old Flyers fans carrying the history of the organization with them, just want to watch the game, whatever. Like, the league is actively trying to court the next generation of NHL fans. And, you know, you and I talked a little bit about ratings and NHL stuff for the All-Star weekend. ESPN PR put out their ratings and stuff. And the growth is heavily in the younger demographic and with women. And they are seeing like a huge amount of growth in that particular area. And, you know, to the league's credit, they know they need sustainability. They can't just count on the old Flyer fans.
No, but you have to be able to do it without completely isolating the majority of the people that are continuing to pay the bills.
Yep.
Right?
But
and
these people are going to pay your next bill.
You don't know that.
Well, you need someone to.
Hey,
they're going to die.
Look at the young generation around Greater Toronto. They're not living here. They're not getting allowed.
They can't afford to.
That's right. So how you tell me how they're going to afford to go support the Toronto Maple Leafs? And I'm not saying that you don't have to do what you're doing, but just be conscientious of who still pays the bills.
Yep.
To your product.
Yeah, I think that's an important element too, is respecting the history and the fans who've been lifelong fans.
You probably isolated a few of them.
Oh yeah.
On Friday night during your skills competition, and that may be the price you have to pay.
Yeah. You know how I feel about that, though, Kip, and we've talked about it, but just like some stuff's for you, some stuff's not. All-star game, not for us.
Speaking of gritty in that mascot game, you know when they played it, eh?
No.
So you thought it was a long night, Friday night after the skills competition. They played after the skills competition.
Like at 10-something at night?
10:30.
Were people still there?
How many kids would stick around?
Well, that's really just, if I may say, that's dumb. Like, you know, all the kids are going, my kids are 6 and they go to bed at 7:30. 7:30.
Who's sticking around?
I'm not making it to that time.
No.
Like, that was a weird one.
All right.
That was a weird one. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We got Ken Hitchcock, fourth winningest coach in NHL history after the break. How many wins? Don't look. Don't look. How many wins?
730.
894.
So many.
All right. Hitch after the break. You're watching and listening to Real Kyper and Bourne.
From the
is Real Kyper and Bourne on Sportsnet 590 The Fan.
Okay, let's welcome in one of the winningest coaches in NHL history. JB, I gave you the number. 894. Let's welcome in Ken Hitchcock. Hitch, you couldn't get to 900 and just round it out for you?
There's an age restriction, and I passed it about 4 years earlier. No, to be honest with you, I'd had enough, and I loved every minute of it, even at the time.
Ken, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but we're going to try to get
I'm going to try a different line here.
We're going to try a different line here and see if we can clean this up. Sammy's going for his record of 3 dropped calls.
We got the triple dunk. Kevin Curry said to say sorry, by the way. I
don't care.
Yeah.
We're way past him now. It's over.
That's old news.
Yeah.
Triple dunk.
What is, you're a betting guy. What is the over-under on Sammy breaking his record of 3 dropped calls?
No chance. 3's a big number.
It's huge.
He's got to get 2 more here. Plus 1,200 if he can get there today.
Okay, let's take 2 with Ken Hitchcock. You got to give me it one more time on the reason why you couldn't find 6 more wins in your career to get to 900.
Well, there was an age restriction, and I passed it 2 years earlier, Nick. I was cooked. I was done, and not the games and not the practices. I love that and still do. But the travel really started to get to me at the end there.
Well, Hitch, thanks for joining us, first of all. And we know that you're doing some coaching consultant with the St. Louis Blues. Not sure how many games you're watching outside of the Blues, but we saw a real good one last night in Madison Square Garden between the Calgary Flames and the New York Rangers that brought great memories of once upon a time, a game that could have it all. Skill, good goaltending, great saves, and a physicality, Hitch, that we aren't really used to seeing on a game-to-game basis here. And, it was led by a guy like Jacob Trouba. And, there are times when I could look at Jacob Trouba and maybe compare him to a choir boy compared to maybe a guy like Darian Hatcher, who you knew real well, and one of the most vicious guys I've seen, right up there with the likes of a Chris Pronger. But your overall thoughts on maybe either what you saw last night or what you heard about in that game?
I watched every second of it.
Oh, good.
And that's hockey. That's the thing hockey love. That's tough. That's aggressive. It's got skill in it. It's got passion in it. And you've got 2 coaches who can drive the bus there. Both guys, Gerard and Sutz, they can really drive it. And I'm hoping that that's what we see for the next games, because it's hard to distinguish any team from another until you see those teams play, and then you say, well, there's what you're going to need if you expect to win in the end. That type of game.
Watching the change in the physicality of the game and how it's evolved over the years. You're a coaching consultant now. How has coaching evolved over the years? How has it changed now for how you dictate, how to communicate to these players, how you want them to get the message?
What's really changed, Justin, is that you have to be comfortable as a coach explaining the end game before you start talking about the start of the game. What I mean by that is that the players want to know where they're going and if they what's in it for them. And you can't be offended by them asking that question. And
yeah, we're gonna have to drop.
Oh my God.
Okay. Okay. Listen, Sammy.
I asked him if he had a landline. He didn't. I don't know what to
You
say.
didn't ask him if he had a landline.
He did.
You did.
And he didn't have one.
I would say that is. I'm stunned. I'm stunned that Ken Hitchcock doesn't have a landline. That's okay.
We are never to have a guest again on a cell phone. I don't care.
We'd never have another guest.
I don't care, Sammy, if you got to get 2 cans and tie a string to them. I'd rather do that than a cell phone ever again.
Okay, let's not get Ken back.
Listen, when he had said that I watched every second of the Calgary,
like,
New
here
York,
we go.
I'm like, I love it.
I was so excited.
I was so excited to hear him talk about it. And it's like, Hitch, can you kind of go on the roof, maybe?
Just hold some tinfoil up and.
He said he's like, I'll move to a window, and then he moved to a window, and it sounded better, and then it just got bad again. What do you want me to do? You want to call him again?
Yes.
So you want to try one more time?
One more time.
One more time.
Yes.
Okay. And if he's on a cell phone.
Talk to Ken Hitchcock.
It's on a cell phone.
Just tell him to move one more time. And besides, there's a selfish part of me that wants you to tie your record.
That's
of
what this
three
is. That's
drops.
100%
my
what this
God.
is.
How?
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay.
And by the way,
yeah.
I mean, I talked a little bit about Darian Hatcher.
Uh-huh.
Oh my God, I love
Darian
him.
Butcher.
I loved him. I wish
to play against him.
No, to have him on my team, whatever team I ever had.
Yeah.
But he had that same type of mentality as Chris Pronger, and that's like, I'll do anything to win.
Like, you played a little bit of that style. You had a bit of that in your game. Was it hard going out for the game? So for me, when I'm standing in the hallway, the ice is drying.
Yeah.
We're about to go out there, whatever, freezing. We're about to go out in there. I'm like, oh, here we go. This is gonna be fun. I'm fly around out there, find a puck, and dilly. Is it like, what is the mindset heavy? You're like, oh, I got to go out there and get
believe
angry.
it or not, it's not. It's like, sometimes I wonder how the game's going to look and feel in the first 5 or 7 minutes. And hey, listen, there's a part of me that goes, I want to score a goal. I want to make a nice play.
Well, listen,
I want to be on
score a ton all through your life, and then
I want to be a highlight. I want to be on a highlight. I want to be on the score sheet the next day. When my buds look at the summary.
Yeah.
But as the game progresses, and if it gets a little kind of greasy out there, and all of a sudden one of your better players gets run, it's like, oh, okay,
I guess we're doing this.
My numbers getting called here.
Hitch is there.
Okay, Hitch. You know how badly we want to talk to you. We're gonna keep calling you.
Okay, well, listen.
That's how desperate we are on this show. No, I'm kidding. We do really want to talk to you, and I got excited because. You did mention that you did watch the game very closely last night, and the elements were very much in the wheelhouse of should I say, the mid-'90s.
I loved it, Nick. I mean, that game was you couldn't turn it off. It was so, and it was really well played, and it was passionate, and they were going right through each other, and it was you could feel the emotion right through the television. It was fun to watch.
And we were kind of getting your answer to my question about coaching today and the change in it. You're saying that you kind of got to start at the end a little bit now with younger players and say, here's where we're trying to get to, and then sort of work through the process of coaching younger players.
Yeah, that's what's really changed, Justin. Is that's a big factor. Like they've got a lot of people that help them get to where they're getting. And they feel like they need to include those people. So those people are asking questions, players asking questions, and you can't be offended as a coach if you've got to give the right answers because I find right now, unless they know where they're going, they're not going to buy into the level that you need them to buy into.
Hey, Ken, can I ask you, when we talk about how the game's evolved in the last 20 years, is it the chicken and the egg theory here? Did we coach a certain element out of our game, or did we run out of players willing to do sorts of things that we've been accustomed to in the past?
You know what changed, Nick, was in the middle 2000s, like 2005 or 6 after that, with the elimination of the red line, the game got stretched out. And so the close quarter part that we all enjoyed and we loved coaching in, players loved playing in, it changed. The game completely changed because the game's now stretched out. Long plays are in. There's all kinds of room through the neutral zone because players are stretching it out for people coming underneath. You look at exits, you look at Toronto, they're one of the best in the league at leaving early out of their own zone. When you look at Toronto and you look at a stop picture of them breaking the puck out, there's never 5 in the zone. The 5th guy is already at the far blue line, and they stretch you out. And so it's hard to get that body contact. It's hard to get that grittiness part of the game because everybody's so far away from each other now.
Mm-hmm. I find that fascinating. And, all of a sudden you have to have great skaters, not average skaters, not even below average skaters, but you need great skaters now on your 3rd and 4th line. But saying that,
exactly.
Hitch, the Leafs are also a team that's been looking for a 4th line for 2.5 years now.
Well, and you know what? They got, like, they're going at it the right way. Like they compete hard for pucks. They win what I call second quick all the time. Like when Toronto turns it up and they've got that second quick game going, which means their second guy's in on contact before your second guy. They're really effective and they possess the puck all the time. So they've got the right element to win long term, and they're going to need a lot of people to do that because you got to do it with 4 lines because you know what it's like, Nick, and you get into these big series against good teams. First 2 lines just saw off, and then now it's up to 3 and 4 to do the job, and so you got to have confidence that you can put your 3 and 4 out there against anybody because your first 2 lines are just going to saw off during a series.
Yeah, I'm interested to get your thoughts on the Leafs' ability to defend in the postseason because, what you're talking about is really it's worked for them in the regular season. They've had great success, and they break the puck out really well. They go back on retrievals, they grab it, and they're out of their zone. You mentioned they get guys out of the zone, they stretch you out, they do that well. Against the heavier teams, we're seeing Boston, Tampa, that get on their D, that make contact, that make them stop the cycle. They have some trouble. Are they able to have success defensively by being a team that seems to defend by not defending, by getting out of their zone?
Yeah. For me, in watching Toronto, because I've seen a lot of their games, they're very successful when they play defense in the offensive zone.
Right.
And they hold on to pucks and they keep possession. I think when you play teams like Boston and Carolina, you've got to find a way to hang on to pucks longer because if you don't, they're going to burn you. Those 2 teams break out against pressure as good or better than anybody in the National Hockey League. And Toronto to win that series, because there's going to be long stretches, guys, where there's not going to be any scoring in the game or the game's going to be tied, they're going to have to win the possession game. And that means they got to have big enough bodies to protect the puck in the offensive zone because you're still going to give up your scoring chances. But if you can get that possession time way up there and just not even create a scoring chance, but wear teams out in their own zone, that's going to make it effective for you to score later in the game.
Hitch, is it still a big man's game, an occasional mean guy that could do something like Trouba did last night? Is that still an element that has to be there to raise the Stanley Cup?
Yes. For sure, Nick. I mean, without the defined role players and the guys that are willing to play right through you, I don't see how you can win. Like if you watch Carolina play right now, I've never seen a team play that hard in front of the opposition net in my life. Like they've got chaos every time they're in the offensive zone. You got chaos at your own net trying to defend these guys, and you watch them use the back of the net countless times just to wear you down, and then they attack. And I think that's the winning style in the playoffs right now is how long can you keep it? How long can you keep them defending and wear them out so they tire? And then that's when they start making mistakes.
So the St. Louis Blues are a team that you're obviously close to. And, they kind of seem stuck in the middle a little bit this year in terms of what direction to be going. What are your thoughts on how the Blues season has unfolded to date?
I would say one thing we've noticed is that we're a team that is situation motivated, and that's not going to be successful at the end. We've got to get back to our own game and motivating our own game. We play hard and well against teams that we either fear or respect, and then when it's just another night and you're just playing hockey, we seem to fumble the ball there. So I think regardless of what happens, we've got to get the culture back where we're competing at a high level every night and not based on the situation, whether the coach is mad or we've lost a game that we should have won and that gets our attention. We got to get our own attention, and we got to really turn our focus inward. And I think if we do that, we can build a culture that we're back on stream again. But when you're situation motivated, it's a hard ball because the coach can't catch it and the players can't keep up to it. And it's really hard to be competitive if you're not consistent.
We're talking to Ken Hitchcock, fourth winningest coach in NHL history. Hitch, you on occasion throughout your coaching career had a few characters, to say the least. I'll name Holly. I'll name JR. I will name Eddie Belfour. Where is Binnington in that mix?
He's right up there.
There's a part of me that really likes this kid a lot, but I
do too.
There is a line, right?
Yeah, and you know what? Part I like about him is he crosses the line and then drags everybody into it. You got no choice, and you got to love that. And that is so much like Eddie. Like Eddie would just cross the line, and the next thing you know, you were in this bloody battle, and he started it, and you end up, you love him. And to me, Binner is a great teammate. The players love him. They know he's got a fuse, and when it gets lit, then everybody's got to hang on for dear life because you're going to get dragged into it whether you like it or not. And I just think you have to be so impressed with his competitiveness. And you go as a coach, you say, now listen, Binner, you got to cut that out. But when you close the door, you're smiling, and that's just who he is. He's a really highly competitive guy. That's a really good goalie in a game where you know what it's like, Nick. Right now, size matters in the net, and he's not the biggest guy, but he's really ultra competitive and never quits on a shot. And I think that becomes contagious.
Is personality important in a team? Do you need to have some characters like that? I feel like some teams today lack that a little bit, and some guys that just, I don't know, bring their teammates into the fight with a little bit of their own flair.
You know what, Justin, I think that whole element of a game I wish was back, where you didn't like another player. We don't talk enough about the guys we don't like, and the personalities. You'd go back and every team had guys like that, the fear of Darian Hatcher going just off, and who knows what would happen. That's an element that makes you really nervous. Like if you're playing against, for us in the West, it was always Kevin Bieksa because he was this wild card. I said to the players one day, I don't even know if Bieksa can skate backwards because he just attacks us all the time. And you've got to circle his number and his name because if you fall asleep when he's on the ice, he's going to step up and kill you. And those type of conversations, towards the end, especially you weren't having those. Everybody was playing the game in a normal fashion, but the wild card guys, they were effective. And, Bieksa was really effective in that game, very similar to the way Chelios played.
Hitch, one more for me before we let you go, and it's around the trade deadline. How many times in your career did you know that the trade deadline's coming, and then you just knew that there was going to be a change or you're going to get a little bit of help? Today, I think there's a level of frustration with all of the coaches knowing that they're in cap hell, and this is what it is, and you better make the best of it. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, you know the mistake that I made was hoping for Mr. Goodbar to show up, because I found that what helped me, and I always talk to the general manager about this. I said, you can ask me about where player X fits in on our team, but don't tell me who's getting let go. I felt like if you knew who was possibly on the block or was going to get traded or might get traded, and what the player transaction was going to be, I thought sometimes you stop coaching that player that you had, and that was a big mistake. So for me, I found it to be a very nervous time for your team, and even teams that were really high up in the standings, some of the players that were nervous had no business thinking like that. But it is a really nervous and tight time for players, and it's like a biggest relief, Nick, when you get through that thing.
Oh, yeah, 100%. One more quick one. Best trade deadline deal for you in your coaching career?
I remember this story. Bob Gainey came to us and said, what do you think we need? This is in 1998 to get over the top. You know, it was us, Detroit and Colorado. And we said, oh, we need a second line this and a first line this or whatever. And he sent us Skrudland and Keene. And it was 2 fourth line guys that ended up being third line guys that they just brought our team together and were the glue of our hockey club. And it was one of the best trades. And these were just role players that came in and did an amazing job and just brought the camaraderie to our team to a whole other level. And he knew that that's what we needed. And we were asking for much more, but what he brought us fit perfectly.
It almost sounds like it's a Coleman Goudreau in Tampa Bay, but
I was just thinking how much the Leafs would love Skrudland and Keene. That would be unbelievable.
But those type of players today cost first rounders now. Do you remember what the package was to get them? Was it expensive?
I thought it was just a face-off in the other zone. I'm not sure, though.
Hey, Ken, really appreciate the effort. You've never sounded better to us. I can tell you that. We really appreciate your patience with us.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thanks, Hitch. Appreciate
Ken
it.
Hitchcock. That was pretty good.
Really good. I could listen to him all day.
Oh, listen.
Sammy's just thanking the
Sammy,
audio gods.
No record broken, Sammy. Your 3 dropped calls intact.
Honestly, from 2 perspectives, I just didn't want to get strangled like Bart Simpson in the break by Kyper.
I'm ready to come through the glass, bud.
And then the second time, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Guy watches. He's got opinions.
Bad news for Hitch. I'm aware he watches the Leafs now, and we like to talk about the Leafs. He may be getting calls.
Well, and just him talking about how much he loves Carolina and the chaos and there's a reason that guy is the 4th winningest coach. Listen to him talk about hockey. I'm sure.
Yeah.
How much do you think Berube's been in his ear? I bet you he's talking to him a lot.
I'm interested in what he
Why
said
wouldn't
about
he, right?
Yeah. If you've got that guy near you, I'd be asking him everything.
Interesting strength he pointed out in the Leafs. He talks about second quicks, as in they're the second guy into the pile. So both teams have a guy in the pile. They got the next guy quicker than the next team.
Love
that keeps the pucks in the pile, keeps it in the offensive zone. That's a good observation. That's important.
Well, it made me think real clear on, that tipping point of our game. And it is red line, in or out. You lost the 2-line pass. And how much quicker did the game get? And ultimately, was it a good thing or not a good thing? Because it did change. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good.
It did change your 3rd and 4th line to, you need high-end skaters to be on your 4th line. You can't get in with the puck moving that quickly. You can't get in on a forecheck on a 4th line if you're not a great skater. And listen, I still push for Wayne Simmons compared to what I've seen for Leaf options, but that's an issue for him.
You're right. The whole game used to move as a collective up through the zones. And now when you have no red line and you stretch it out, you have to be able to cover that ground with your feet. And so to your point, to get in on pucks 100%, I've loved 4th liners that are younger because of energy and ability to go. You're more like a dog chasing a tennis ball at a dog park than you are this guy in a battle.
This is where the Leafs have excelled, is that to Ken Hitchcock's point, they get out quick.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times early in the season where it just wasn't in sync, and the stretch passes weren't timed well. They were guys stopping up, but then they got it together for a good portion of the regular season, and they once again became a very quick team. Here's the one thing I do not like with no red line is sometimes it can look to me like a friggin' ping pong game, chip and chase. And as quick as some of these guys are, they're still not fast enough to get in there.
Yeah.
And
D are so good now, so fast themselves. They get back on pucks.
And the puck's in and out. And you're looking, and you could see the crowd at center ice looking like they're at Wimbledon more than they are an NHL game.
So when I would tag events for the Marlies, one of the things I would do is every time there's a regroup, I hit the R button, whatever, and then a neutral zone forecheck, I hit the N button, whatever, and it would be regroup, neutral zone forecheck, regroup, neutral zone forecheck. I used to call it the neutral zone swirl. You'd get caught in it for 45 seconds at a time.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We got Larry Brooks, a longtime NHL writer for the New York Post. He's going to join us. We'll get some thoughts on his views of the Rangers in Calgary last night. Also, of course, a lot of talk around the National Hockey League Players Association having a new executive director coming very soon, and his name is Marty Walsh. We'll get his thoughts on that and more when we come back to Real Kyper and Bourne.
Okay, Steven, you ready to dream bigger? Ready, Max. You see, your usual...
Real Kyper and Bourne on Sportsnet 590 The Fan.
Just waiting on Larry Brooks from the New York Post. A lot of talk about the NHLPA, and not many people know about Marty Walsh.
Yeah.
So let's bring in Larry Brooks. We'll talk about the NHLPA, but first and foremost, it seems to be a good portion of our show has revolved around the game at Madison Square Garden. Let's welcome in Larry Brooks now, and just your thoughts, Larry. And the one thing that stood out for us throughout the hour and 20 minutes we've already been on air is how much the game last night in New York against Calgary didn't look like a typical game we see during the regular season anymore.
No, hey, good afternoon, gentlemen. It was a fun night. It was a wild game. It was kind of a throwback game. There was a lot of edge to it from the start. I think the fact that it was the first game for the Rangers in 10 days and first game for Calgary in 9 played into it. It was pretty sloppy. There were a lot of mistakes. There was a lot of open ice, but there were wild momentum swings. There was a delayed penalty that was going to be a major that was rescinded. There was a goal that was reviewed on off the skate. Obviously, there were the 2 Trouba hits, followed by fights, each time legal hits where he had to then drop his gloves. There was a big hit on Lucic from Semi Blais. It was a wild game, and there were some spectacular, picturesque goals too. I mean, if you check out Zibanejad's game tire, check out the pass from Panarin. So it was a game that never really stopped. It got going, and there were some delays for video reviews, but it was a game that from beginning to end was, there were twists and turns, and it was like an old time rivalry game, between a team that hadn't played this year and only plays twice. So it was different. It was. And Trouba said, when Trouba has these games, there's a different feel to them. Yeah. It does feel, back to the 1990s. And for me, back to the 1970s and even earlier than that when I was watching as a fan. So it was a good one last night. Yeah. If you could bottle that one.
Yeah, no kidding.
The TV ratings probably wouldn't be talking about TV ratings.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It feels like they need that Trouba to drag them into these fights. And this is a team going into this year that had high expectations off their playoff performance last year. A little bit of a slow start, but are you starting to see that Stanley Cup contender emerge again?
Yeah, I am. I don't think they're in the upper echelon. If you want to divide the league, who would you put at the top? You put Boston, yeah. Right? And I guess Carolina, then you'd have Carolina. Do you believe in the Western teams? I'm not sure. Toronto's a good team. I'm not sure if the Rangers are there, but I know they're the next maybe half step below because they're a little bit more than the sum of their parts. They're not a perfect team. They've got deficiencies. But I think everybody in the league does. It's a difficult league to mend deficiencies because of the cap. You can't just go out and get someone to fix your problem. About half the teams are capped out already, and have been capped out most of the year. So you deal with your flaws, and I think the Rangers. It took a long time for the Rangers to find some consistency in their game, to find some chemistry in their game. They lost some pretty important players. They lost 3 of their top 6 forwards from last year. I mean, Kopp and Vetrano and Strome were in their top 6 last year. They all left as free agents, and so they were filling those holes. And from the beginning of the season, from the off season on, it was clear that the Rangers were going to need their younger players to take a step this year because, of the absence of Kopp, who was playing top 6 last year when they got him at the deadline, and Vetrano. And then you're going to need Trocheck to be able to somewhat duplicate the chemistry that Strome had with Panarin. Well, that hasn't happened. And it took a long time for the kids to start to develop, to take the next step. And when we talk about kids, they're young adults, obviously. But we're talking about Philip Hedel and Kako and Alexis Lafreniere. And the last two, Lafreniere and Kako, get more notice because they were the first and second overall picks in the draft in 2019 and 2020. And it took a while, and they played together, last year during the playoffs. They ignited the Rangers. They didn't seem to have the same kind of chemistry when they were put together the first time around. Then the second time around, it was a little bit better. But now they're together, and they're playing. The three of them are playing their best hockey of their career. So they have now become the Rangers' second line. And that means that Trocheck has now slid down to a third line role, which is different. It means that Panarin is playing with Zibanejad, which is different. So it's a different kind of mix. But again, they understand how to win. They're a pretty resourceful team, and I think they come at you with their top four on D. When you've got Fox and Lindgren on one, and you've got K'Andre Miller and Trouba on the next, you're set up pretty well, and they've gotten good goaltending. Not great. Shesterkin has not been at the level he was last year, but he's improved as the season goes along. So I can see them winning a 4 out of 7 from just about any team in the league. I can also see them losing. It's that close, but I think they're going to have a shot going in to make a run. I do.
We're talking to Larry Brooks, longtime NHL writer for the New York Post, around the hockey world. His Slapshot column is a must-read. Larry, as far as the National Hockey League Players Association, it just seems like it's all but rubber stamped that their next executive director will be U.S. Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh. It sounded to me, Larry, that maybe even a few weeks ago, this was not on the radar. As far as on the scale of coming out of left field, where is this on a 1 to 10?
Yeah, this is Carl Yastrzemski, right? Actually, it sounded to me about a week ago that Mike Gillis was in pretty good position to get this job, and I'm not sure what happened. I believe they were the two final candidates. I think there was a spirited discourse. I'm not sure how the vote went exactly, but I'm not sure. That Walsh has an impressive background, obviously, but I don't know. And I'm hoping to talk to a couple of guys in the next couple of days, but I don't know what his philosophy is. Is he going to be adversarial? Is he going to be let's try and get along and grow the pie kind of guy? I don't know. It's a tough job, and there's a lot of work to be done, and there's work to be done immediately if the NHLPA and NHL are going to fashion an agreement to increase the cap by more than $1 million next year. Yeah. And it seems to me that it's absurd not to. The money is coming. It's going. They're going to be reasonably close to paying off the escrow debt. The numbers to me, it's kind of like voodoo economics. They come out of talk about left field. They kind of come out of left field. Nobody really knows what the escrow debt was and how it's been paid off. But if there's a flat cap again next year, which Gary now has indicated it looks like that's what's going to be, it's just strangling the league. It just strangles the league. It strangles, the top 12, 15 teams in the league. It strangles guys over the summer. Why not smooth it out? It's going to go up by another, by $4.5 million in 2 years, or $4 million in 3 years. So why not smooth it out? And, increase the cap to 3.5, by 3.5 next year, and 3.5 the year after, and 3.5 the year after that. And I think that's, I would hope that was part of the discussion when Walsh was making his presentation. Like, how are you going to approach this? And, I think Don Fehr was far less adversarial than people expected. And I think there was a fair amount of angst over the way the PA has operated over the last number of years. And so, I know that they were talking about looking at people who had a labor background. They were looking at people who had business background because, it's almost on the players to increase revenue. They're employees, but they have to grow the pie so they can get their 50% of it. So I'm not sure, what Walsh actually, what his philosophy is going to be on this, but it's an interesting hire.
Do you think they could run into an issue? Reading some of Frank Saravalli's reporting today, Walsh has ties, from his political background to Jeremy Jacobs, the most powerful owner in the NHL, who, had been putting quite a bit of money into Walsh's campaign, it sounds like, throughout his years in politics. Is that the sort of thing that could derail this, or does it sound like one that doesn't make a difference if the league or if the players want him, that's the way it's going to be?
Yeah, I'm not educated on that, so I probably shouldn't, speak to it. But I would imagine that this is not going to be, if he's gotten to this point, it's probably not going to be, it's probably not going to keep him from getting the job, I would think. But honestly, I'm just not educated on that.
I know where you are educated, and that's labor disputes in hockey over the history.
Yeah.
So tell me something. This is, Larry, 3 years away from a collective bargaining agreement opening up again. Is this really headed towards that? Is this a big picture kind of thing? Would that be the first and foremost on the players' minds? Or are we in a situation where, hey, guys, the fight's over, man. There's never going to be a shutdown ever again. You can't go anywhere with a 50-50. Fans won't buy into it. There's no appetite and no patience for the fans to ever see this game shut down again.
I think there's no patience for the. I think that's true, but I think that fans always come back too. I mean, they're like a captive audience, honestly, and it's. I shouldn't even say they. It's it's we. I mean, people are angry, and then the next year or in the middle of the season, the season starts, and what are you going to do? You're not going to watch. You're going to punish yourself because you're upset. So I don't know, but I would. But again, I would think. I would hope. I mean, Nick, if you were playing, wouldn't that have been the first question? Well, we have a CBA coming up in 3 years. What's your position on this? Are we going to be militant? Are we going to? Are we going to look at this at the margins? What can we do? Because I don't think. Listen, the NHL was threatening to shut down during the pandemic. It was a tough negotiation, and I'm not and I've written this. I'm not particularly cheerful about how the agreement was crafted on the PA side. I think that the union bowed to the escrow hawks. I think that there was a real tilt toward older players on expensive contracts who were tired of losing escrow. And I think that the majority of the players got shafted on this deal. I do. I mean, you could see it. The flat cap. There's no room for free agents. There's no room for Group 2s. I mean, so the entire middle class gets squeezed. And so I would think that would have been part of the presentation. Here's what we're going to look for. Because the NHL is always going to use the hammer. They're never going to come out and say, oh, no, don't worry, we're not going to lock you out. Don't worry. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. That's always the hammer. And that's always what the NHLPA is dealing with, knowing that they're facing an adversary / partner, but I think more of an adversary in certainly collective bargaining, who will shut the business down. So, that's, and I understand that, it was Don Fehr was in a difficult position the last time during the pandemic when they redid the agreement, they extended it. I get it. It was tough. I didn't like it at all. But it was a tough negotiation for him. It's going to be tough for Marty Walsh too, because they have, again, in the NHL, they've got a force that just will shut down the business if they don't like the agreement. So it will be very interesting. I'm not sure. The other thing too is that you have to educate the players, and the players in this generation are not. They're just not. They're not. They're not invested in the labor negotiations the way guys in the 90s and 2000s were. They're just not. They're making an immense amount of money. Everyone's doing well, and it's just not in the forefront. I mean, there are players who are just not educated in the history of the union, who just are not educated in the contemporary back and forth. And that is one of the major jobs, I would think, of the Players Association's administration, to get players more involved and to have them understand what the CBA is and what it means.
Everyone younger than 40, Larry, is just like, yeah, you just give me the term. I don't read the terms and conditions. You just tell me. Tell me what the situation is.
Yeah, pretty much.
Last question for me is just, you'd mentioned those big name guys on big tickets. I want to get your thoughts. Kane, Taves, New York Rangers. Will we see that this season? Either one of those guys wearing the red, white, and blue?
I don't see Taves.
No.
And I don't see where he plays on this team. Honestly, they've got Trocheck now as their third line center. I think, Hedl, I think they're going to ride with Hedl. So I'd be surprised, Taves. Kane has always been the guy because of his experience with Panarin in Chicago. It always seemed a natural fit. I started writing about it last December. But I thought what I believe is that Kane made a lot more sense for them last year than this year. They would have had the 2 playoff runs as opposed to 1. They would have had a full season with him. And now I think what's changed a little bit with them is the fact that Panarin's playing with Zibanejad. Zibanejad is now just, it's hard to play with Panarin. It's very hard to play with Panarin. And Zibanejad is just learning how to play with Panarin. Now you're going to bring in Patrick Kane. I'm not sure. And of course the cost is going to determine, I think, to a large extent what the Rangers do. They're not going to be, they're not going to give up any of their kids off their roster. They're not going to trade Brennan Hoffman, who, was their first-round draft pick a couple of years ago. So what they have to deal basically is Zach Jones and Vitaly Kravtsov and a first-rounder. I don't know that that's their biggest need at this point. What I look at them, I think they need to bulk up, because when they lost their 4 straight to Tampa last year in the conference finals after winning the first 2, they could not get to the net. They couldn't score, and they had scorers. They could not get to the net, and they could not wear down the Tampa defensemen over the series. They just weren't big enough. So I think they need to add a little size, and I think they need to add a little meanness, and I think they need to add on their left D. They're really very thin on D. They're terrific in their top 4. Braden Schneider is an outstanding 20, 21-year-old right defenseman who plays on the third pair, but they're using Ben Harper on the left on that third pair. He generally doesn't play a lot the last 10, 12 minutes of close games, as the Rangers like to cut down. I think they could use a lefty, and I think they're looking for a big physical lefty. But their other issue is next year's cap pretty much limits them to trading for rentals.
Yeah.
They're in such a bad spot for next year it's almost unbelievable.
Larry, the Rangers and Toronto. So is there any scenario at all where you see Kane renting himself out, knowing that he can't stay? Like, once you go to New York, man, you don't want to leave.
Yeah, he can't stay.
Yeah, he can't stay.
No way.
And he can't stay in Toronto.
It's impossible. No, it's impossible. Now, would he like to? He obviously can direct the trade. I mean, he can tell the Blackhawks, listen, I want to go to New York, and I'm not going anywhere else, and I want you to take their best offer, because I don't want to go to a team that's gutting itself, So I think it could play out that way, but I don't know Patrick Kane.
Yeah.
And again, he played with Panarin a long time ago. 15, 16, 16, 17. So it's a lot of, it's a lot of players.
Well, Larry, we really appreciate your feedback, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks,
Thank
Larry.
you. Thanks
Yeah.
for
Larry Brooks.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, Larry Brooks, NHL writer for the New York Post. Interesting thoughts on Pat Kane, and of course, what we think is going to get rubber stamped very quickly.
So Larry was there when you were there.
Marty Walsh as executive director. Yes, Larry's been there forever.
Yeah.
I mean,
with the Post too, like not
yes.
like 9 different papers, like Larry,
Oh,
the
no.
Post.
And we can recall like Larry's most famous moment in his career.
Oh, then get the out of here then.
What is it? What am I saying, Brooksy? What do you?
I guess that's what I'm saying, Brooksy.
I guess that's what I'm saying, Brooksy.
Oh my God,
that was awesome.
That
was awesome. So, I mean, I've been around as a player in the Players Association and watched these various. I lived through a strike. I went through a lockout. I don't think that people necessarily have to worry about a new guy coming in to try to outmuscle Gary Bettman. You will never, ever outmuscle Gary Bettman and the owners ever again. So let's just get that
league will
straight.
Would Larry's talking about how the league would just shut down again, or that's their ultimate threat? Like, are they that? Surely they know it would end poorly.
I don't think, JB, there's anything to shut down for.
Right.
It's just not there anymore. Like, you've gone
the
to
hard cap.
50-50.
Yeah.
Now, does the NHL want to bring them down to 44, 42? Like, how many fans would sympathize with the NHL owners for going below a 50%?
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing more fair in life than 50%, and of course on this show I get 70, you get 15, and Sam gets 15, but that's different.
Well, that to me, that's sort of fair, given what we deserve.
So what is this really about? Well, this is going to be about the smaller stuff. It's going to be about, okay, what can we do to get a new guy in there that might have to go and fight for us a little harder on micro stuff, not macro, micro.
Yeah, but and I mentioned it to Brooksy just because I read it in Frank's article. Interesting to hire a guy who seems aligned with an NHL owner previously. I mean, if this guy's buddies with ownership, is that a great position to go into?
No, optically it's not, but we don't necessarily know the relationship.
No, we don't.
The one thing that strikes me, and you mentioned this, I think he's won without a law degree. When was the last time someone was in that position?
No law experience, no hockey experience, tied to an owner.
Well,
what am I missing?
I don't know. I don't know
anything about it.
I don't know how much he's tied to him. We'll have to, either hear from him, or I'm sure someone in the media will address it. I can't believe that you were the mayor of Boston and you have no interaction with a very powerful, person like Jeremy Jacobs in Boston.
Yeah.
So I got to think that there is some sort of relationship, but how is it going to play out with his new job? I don't. That wouldn't make me nervous right now. It wouldn't.
No.
I mean, he's a pretty sharp guy, I'm sure.
Well, obviously, like he's on Biden's staff. Like he left some work to be on Biden's staff for a while, and then left when he didn't get named chief of staff. Like he's that high up with the current president. So the man Clearly has some influence.
There will be some stuff that he can go in there and kind of shake it up. Now, Donald Fair's out because he just lost his ability to go in there and kind of fight for the players a little bit on smaller stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest one, and the one that kind of I scratch my head on still, is like, where is the league going with international revenue, right? Where is it? Like, where is the game plan? Where are we?
You know where we're going?
Yeah, I know where we're going. Good day, mate. Good day. How about some shrimp on the barbie? Where are we going, JB?
Australia.
We're going to Australia. Well, hey, I mean, I don't know. There might be some money in Australia, but like, where's the game plan? Where is the thought process? Not hey, let's throw a dart on the wall and we're going to Australia, but like, can we have a 4, a 6, an 8-year plan on where we see Australia? Not on an exhibition game, but in 4 or 5 years?
I know. No, I mean, if I'm a player, we're talking about, Bettman was just talking about respecting individual players' choice. My individual choice is to not start my NHL season on the other half of the planet, where you're going to come back and be jet lagged, and like, it's terrible. It takes a while to recover from going to live in Australia for
they're
10 days.
They're pulling out Don Johnson suits for Mitch Marner to wear. They can get them to go to Australia and cook some shrimp on the barbie to sell the game.
I don't know, man. That's a tough sell.
Well, just send them to like the Yukon or Northwest Territories or Halifax.
The Shark season was over before they left Czechia this year, wherever it was they played.
Australia.
Yeah.
I got a DM from one guy one time that's like, I'm from Australia. What would you think of a hockey down here? So that guy, gonna be thrilled.
Listen, my cousin was the GM of Australian ice hockey team over there. Yeah.
Really?
It's real. He played the whole kit and caboodle. So
how good's the level? Could I go there and make a D team?
I think you would have a chance, is my understanding.
Yeah, you're better off trying to golf.
I actually considered doing it in the summers here when I was playing college hockey. Go down there and play their winter.
Now, I did hear that, not the sense of urgency, but getting him named as quickly as possible can get the talks started for changing the CBA before, I guess, June 30th. That's the date on getting the salary cap up.
And that's something the players want.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Gary and the owners.
Everyone should want that.
That is going to happen here. But I think I had heard earlier that, some people were talking about, $6 or $7 million or $5 million. I had heard that it's the most you can go up is 5%. And that is probably because of the certain things in the CBA that there is a cap. You can negotiate a cap for next season to go up.
That much? $4 million?
What would 5% be on 82?
Yeah, it's like just over 4.
That's not necessarily that you're going to take it all.
Mm-hmm.
I just heard that was the
would
max.
be the limit. Yeah,
that would be the limit. So I believe now that that's a foregone conclusion. They will bring the cap up. Is it 85? Is it 84? As Larry Brooks had said, by at least the end of next year, the debt will be paid off by the players.
Well, that's a good point by
news.
Larry, and other people have made that point too, just about the smoothing thing. Like, if you know what's going to get there right now, the league really is suffocated. Like, player movement, new contracts. It's, God, you see what the other, highest paid players in other sports are making. The NHL was in line with it 20 years ago, and now $12.5 million here, whatever it is, $40 million in most sports.
The other thing that Larry said
that's you say Kikuchi money in baseball.
Yeah.
The other thing that Larry said that kind of pissed me off, or at least reminds me, and it's not what Larry said pissed me off, but the truth of the guys just don't pay attention. And you need to educate it.
Well, they don't?
They're in this mess because they never paid attention.
Yeah.
Because they didn't care. And a lot of them still I bet you if you asked them how escrow worked, they wouldn't have a clue.
They're like, we'll let the grown-ups sort it out. I'm just a
Not a
kid
clue.
playing hockey. And it's like, no, you're a grown-up now. You're in your 20s and you're making millions of dollars. This is important.
I would hope that now, this isn't the Sid and Ovi era is, on its last few years. This Marty Welsh coming in now, it's not Sid and it's not Ovi and the guys around that era, but this is now Jack Hughes.
Mm-hmm.
It's Matthew Tkachuk. It's Marner.
Tage
it's
Thompson,
Matthews,
Jason Robertson.
Thompson. Now those guys, they're young enough where they can pay attention, but they're going to have to.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to force themselves to learn and, to Larry's point, get educated.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, tough to make someone learn who doesn't want to learn. But no, I agree. That's a crucial part of this, and something I wish I had done more of in my younger days is, pay attention. Tune in, kids. It's my Don Cherryism of the day.
Speaking of
Listen up, kids.
Speaking of the cap, Dylan Cousins got lots of money against the cap.
7 years, $49.7 million. That's a nice carrot to dangle a young kid. Is he 21?
You know who he can thank? Tage Thompson. He can thank Tage for his long-term deal, looking instantly brilliant, and them going, maybe we can do it again.
He is 21 years old.
Oh, yeah.
He's-
How does a 21-year-old turn down $50 million?
No brainer.
But this is...
I love the kid. I love the player.
Me too.
It's a fantastic deal for Buffalo.
You're getting the best seasons of his career.
And in
He's
2 or
Bo
3
Horvat,
years,
cheaper and better.
2 or 3 years, as we know, the cap will rise.
Yeah.
Buffalo's locked in. I don't know if Adams plays his cards right, man. He's going to have a Stanley Cup contending team in probably under 3 years.
Buffalo could be good. Montreal could be good.
For
and
have 2 or 3, 4 opportunities for a dynasty. They could, but you need a goalie.
Yeah.
No, you need.
Yeah.
Come on, take a look. Darlene, Power, right?
Darlene
Tage
Power's
Thompson.
it. That's
like,
enough. You're gonna have a number one.
How
pair
is
of
it not
two
trending?
top 10 guys.
How's it not trending in the right direction for Buffalo if they just kind of close off 1 or 2 more pieces here,
Yeah.
and then one has to be the goalie.
I saw
Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
I saw Emily Kaplan wrote a piece for ESPN today talking about Vancouver Canucks getting calls on Demko.
Demko, yeah.
And there was 4 teams that had called, and apparently they hadn't turned him down. They didn't say no to anything, apparently.
Listen,
They like this UPL, though. They do.
I don't know if you guys remember, but last year, tell me if you remember this. I told you, the quickest way to improve the Vancouver Canucks last year. Who did I say?
No idea.
Bo Horvat.
What,
trade him?
Trade him?
Yes. You don't remember that?
Oh, maybe I do.
Okay.
We've said a
Anyways,
lot
I
of
threw
things
it
in a
out,
lot
and
of
you guys
days.
were like, no way.
Yeah.
Like, the biggest mistake they've made now is that they didn't trade Bo and JT Miller.
For sure.
That's it.
For
Like, think
sure.
about
That's a
where they, in the last 6 or 8 months, if they really, really knew that they weren't Bo Horvat fans, like, you missed the boat.
They did miss the
But
boat.
you also missed the boat that Miller, you should have got rid of Miller too.
Big boats. Missing them. Yeah, no, I agree.
Right?
But it is
Like having the
start
Vancouver
of a
Canucks
new
right now
era.
in a Connor Bedard. Hey, we're going for Connor, which would have been the tank of, I'm sure. But hey, listen, that's the new NHL now. We know that's true. We know it's there. It's real. But there would have been a lot more of a buy-in for Connor Bedard today.
Well, yeah, but what I was getting at there is I'm pretty sure the Buffalo Sabres are one of the teams that have called on Demko.
Yes.
Wouldn't you think? Like, if that, to me, if they figured out a way to, I know he's had a down year, he's been hurt or whatever, but if they got Demko.
But are they ready?
I don't know.
Are they ready?
That's the question.
And to spend assets again. This Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, I know it's a funny name, but
It's
he's
a hell of a
he's
handle.
a very good goalie.
Right? And you don't want to send them away and thinking you've made now 2 mistakes with an Ulmer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's...
Man, they look good with Ullmark.
Listen, Owen Power could be a top 5 defenseman in the NHL, and Rasmus Dahlin might win the Norris this year.
Yeah.
You have 2 guys like that back there, you're going to be good. You are going to be very, very good. Yeah, Tage Thompson, obviously, Cousins now locked up. Like, they're going to have pieces.
I love that tuck.
We can
even
talk.
Skinner's having a good year now.
We can talk all we want.
When they win, he won't be a part
We
of
can
it.
talk all we want about Pat Kane going to New York or Toronto, but come on, how's Buffalo not make that call
I
and
wonder-
say, Pat, we can take you now. You just have to be on board.
So if you're a Kane, do you say, I'll do it for $6 million? You know, like I'll play for...
I think you got to show more respect than that.
He has been dreadful this year.
Wow, come on. Look at the circumstances.
The game is
Just
over.
saying.
The
The
organization
team's no good.
has
There's no one
been
to play with.
dreadful. You hung me out to dry.
I'm just saying. He has not been good.
He can get his points and make his plays, though. Yeah, I think you give him reason to be motivated again.
I would say there's a different situation playing for your hometown team who's all of a sudden sneaky good and hot here versus playing for a crappy franchise that's, going in the wrong direction. So, anyways.
Best thing to happen to the Sabres, get in playoffs this year. Get some experience in those big games. Get beat up by the Bruins a little bit. Learn some lessons.
God, that'd be a fun playoff series, though, I think.
Really fun.
Sabres could take 1 or 2 off them.
No, you'd get shelled.
4 straight?
Yeah.
I don't know.
How was your bets? Did New Jersey not help you by not winning a regulation?
I had Florida to beat Tampa. That was the hard part of the bet. Jersey goes
How
up
about
4-1.
Matthew Tkachuk, 5 points, just picking up right off the 3-on-3 game.
Vasilevsky looked atrocious.
And they're right back at it tonight, Tampa Bay.
Yes, sir.
Lose again.
San Jose. All right, our thanks to Chris Therien, Ken Hitchcock, and Larry Brooks. That was a fast 2 hours. Love to hear from you. Give us a rating and review, a thumbs up on YouTube. Always glad you're aboard. Enjoy tonight, and we're right back tomorrow on the Real Kyper and Bourne Show. Have a good night, everybody.